Representative Miller, I said that you called No Child Left Behind the worst brand in America. Could you explain why you think people perceive it so badly and what needs to be included in the new version of the bill for it to really work?
Well, what No Child Left Behind did, and I was one of the primary authors of that legislation, I'm very proud of that. What it did, it blew the cover off the public school system in this country. They were hiding their failures. They were telling people in suburban schools or urban schools or rural schools that they were doing better this year versus last year. What they were doing was whipping the top 25% of the students harder and harder to bring up the average. And the minute they knew that in that third or fourth year they were going to be in trouble, the governor switched the exam so you couldn't compare those years. You started over again. Or the school district switched the exam so that you could never measure them over the long term. Meanwhile, we had 8% of the Hispanics proficient in fourth grade math, 16% of the blacks proficient in fourth grade math. It got worse in the 8th grade. It got much worse in the 12th grade. And so what happened? People thought that their school was a good school because that's what the school board told them, that's what the superintendent told them, that's what their local politician told them, and now they were embarrassed and they were angry. When you get embarrassed publicly, you usually go to anger. So they hated No Child Left Behind because it begged the question, what are you going to do about this? Do you believe this country can survive with 8% of its fourth graders proficient in the minority community, in the poor community? You think you can maintain the United States of America as a democracy with that? And now, here we are. My goal always was the explosion of the data onto the public scene to take the covers off of this system. And you can apportion blame out. If you want to make this into teachers versus everybody else, you're missing the game. Because school boards and superintendents and PTAs and local politicians liked their school system when it was neat and it was comfortable. It just wasn't serving the children. And so now we're into the next iteration. Are we going to use the technology of today? Are we going to use the talent of young people coming to this system? Are we going to take teachers and give them full-time professional development? Are we going to pay them for the responsibility, for their professional development, for their accountability, for their performance, the performance of their students? Are we going to have a system that speaks to the outcome and the performance of the students? That's a very different system. It's a huge political change. I don't know if this country has the courage to do it. I don't know if the Congress has the courage to do it. But I'll tell you what, as you see, as mayors and governors and other people struggle with this school system, it's hard to be politically accountable in the political rank, in our political system if you don't have a good school system. People run around trying to remodel their bathrooms, saying they're going to improve the value of the home. Fix your school system, the value of your home will go up automatically because the first thing people ask when they want. When you young people want to go out and you want to say, I want to buy that house, the next question you ask, what school district is it in?
That's true. That's true.
Easy.
Easy. Congressman Miller, do you want to respond to that before I take a question?
Well, I think that's too simplistic. I see change taking place all across the country in public systems that have adopted public charter schools, that have let people go to private charter schools, that have adopted open choice system, that have adopted starting now, finally across the country, to adopt evaluation systems. There's no question that the teachers' unions are a powerful part of this argument. They should be. They're central to its success. They can be central to its failure. They've got to make a decision. But what you see, people have been coming through a program called the Teacher Incentive Fund, a Republican-started program in the Congress, been coming with their union, with their superintendent, saying, we want to redesign the workplace. We want a modern workplace. We want a place where we collaborate, where we can get time to prepare for class, where we can improve our skills, and we can have some sustainable changes. That's happening all over the country. Not enough places. And this isn't sugarcoating it. I've been in the middle of these battles. I don't get endorsed by a number of the teacher organizations from time to time, okay? I've been out there. I put on the floor of the Congress. I thought it was a good idea that we ought to have a qualified teacher in every classroom. So I said, the federal law, if they're going to give you the money, I want to know as an investor, what am I getting back? I think there should be a qualified teacher in every classroom. I lost that amendment 434-1. Today it's the law. It's not sufficient today, but it's the law. And we're going to have teacher evaluations. We're going to have tenure changes. That's a simple fact. Because you can't run and design a modern system if you're held back in those fashions. But that's being done all across the country with the unions, and I think it's going to be a part of the law.
I'm being urged to take a question from the audience. Miller, would you like to answer that?
Well, on the question of parental involvement, I've spent 10 years since No Child Left Behind was passed traveling around the country looking at models of success. And where I see sustainable success, not a one-year wonder of 30, 40% increase in test scores, almost any superintendent in school can do that. Can you do it over 5, 8, 10 years of time for those students? What I see, and I think maybe I'll ask Jeff if he can attest to this, and maybe he has a different version of it. But when I go into difficult neighborhoods in LA or in Houston or in Chicago, I see where parents have decided in that community, because they've been invited in by the school to participate, they've made a conscious decision that that school, all English learners up by Cook County Hospital, that school is the most important cultural and economic asset they have control of. In Chicago, every school has a school board. They elect it. They participate. In Oakland, where you see successful schools, the community is there. There's damn near as many parents on campus as there are students throughout the day, because they're participating in mentoring, they're participating in truancy, they're participating in security, they're participating in their own language skills to help their children. This cannot be an isolated entity within a community. And we've opened it up now as to the poor performance. Now we've got to open it up to build the good performance. But without that community buy-in, without the teacher buy-in, without if people just think that you can do reform over there, they're kidding themselves. And parents have got to come back. We have now in California a parent trigger. So, this is a very different system. We talk about reauthorizing Elementary Secondary Education Act, No Child Left Behind, whatever you want to call it. This is a modern world that it's going to be reauthorized in. We're dragging a system, that never came across the bridge that Bill Clinton talked about for the 21st century. We didn't bring the American school system across that bridge. Right. A lot of other people came across that bridge. So the teaching talent is different, the technology is different, our ability to collaborate. Jeffrey Canada makes partnerships with community organizations. In Oakland, they got to make a partnership with the police department, with Parks and Recreation Department, with small business communities for training. We've got to give them the flexibility at the federal level to do that. And I think that's how you get parents involved, because then they see the future for their kids. And that's what they want more than anything else. Generations of Americans, immigrants, or native born, or whatever it is, have wanted that educational improvement for their children, and they're not getting it today.
As reformers, we spend a lot of time talking about how we should get rid of the worst teachers in the profession. And I think everybody ought to agree with that. But maybe we ought to spend a little less time on that and a little more time trying to figure out why we're losing 50% of the people from the profession in the first 5 years, and what it's going to do, what it's going to take to get them there.
But again, the world has changed. If you wanted to be a teacher, you took it as you found it. You want to teach here, these are the rules. Today there's public choice, there's charters, public and private, there's new schools within districts. LA just handed out a thin contract for schools so the teachers, they can design how the teachers want to run the school. And the fact of the matter is, I think teachers should be more demanding about insisting on the conditions under which they would give the school their talents.
Yeah, except
there's a changing world. I understand what you're going to say, but the fact, no.
That's not,
hey, let him say it.
George, it's not
Governor,
reality.
let me finish. The fact of the matter is, the suggestion was that you're the teacher. These are the conditions. Teach for America has blown the doors off of that argument. Schools with choice have done it. Charter schools have done it. And the fact of the matter is, the models are out there now, and you're seeing the change. You're seeing the change in large systems like LA.
Okay, Governor.
And that's the difference.
And if we don't fix this now, we're going to lose another generation of kids.
I think the fact of the matter is, we're at that demarcation point, and this next generation of teachers are going to be able to step across the line in an environment that's entirely different. If we do our job at the federal level, and if states do their job, and Race to the Top blew the doors off a lot of this discussion. So it's a very different environment. I'm not suggesting it's universal, but you're no longer isolated as you were before. You're not even as isolated in a city as you were before, but clearly nationally and statewide, there's a lot of places to go for the resources and a lot of districts that are doing this. And to suggest that it can't be done because of the teachers union is to cave into the argument that it can't be done.
No, it's not.
It is.
No, it's not, George. It's not to cave in.
I think we stand right on the edge of having a bipartisan agreement that really does speak to the future of these children, that ask the question, the future of our economy, and we're there. We have learned a lot in the last 10 years, but we have to understand something. At its heart, No Child Left Behind is a civil rights law. The role of the federal government since the 1960s is to make sure that poor and minority children have an equal opportunity at that educational opportunity that America presents to its children. And that's the struggle. A lot of districts would like to forget about English learners. They would like to move students with disabilities over here somewhere else and make excuses for the African American population. You don't get to do that under this law. You have to provide that educational opportunity, and you have to measure the success that we're having with it. Saying that, I think if we keep that accountability in place, that we're pretty close on a bipartisan, that we can provide a lot of flexibility for really dynamic school systems. This is a very dynamic society today. This isn't the 1990s. This isn't the 1980s. People are moving around the cities in New Jersey, the cities in California, or Texas, or New York. And so superintendents got to be able to move and to change, and principals got to be able to move and change in real time with what's happening to families. And we don't have that kind of flexibility. But we've got to have that accountability. The gift that's been given to us are two things. Race to the top, set the table for reform. Real reform, future reform, not just tinkering with the past. We've done that for 37 years. I've been on the committee. Sometimes I think, what am I designing here? The Hudson automobile? You don't even know what I'm talking about, right? Okay. So, but the fact is, we have that opportunity. So Race to the Top did that, and then the governors, working before Barack Obama was ever elected, have come up with the idea of high quality standards that children should meet. Common Core standards that we would have across 47 governors, I believe, have signed on. And then coming up with assessments that really tell us how our children are doing. Not filling in the bubble on some multiple choice thing and you kind of figure it out or they don't take it. So this is the opportunity. It's now. Whether or not this political system can seize it remains to be seen, but I think we're so close, and I'm meeting tomorrow with my Republican chairman. We've been talking for months. We worked together last year when I was the chairman and he was the ranking member. I mean, we know what one another is doing, and if people really want to make fundamental change for a modern economy and a modern society, we have this moment right here for all of these things that we've been talking about that did not exist 5 and 10 years ago. And the studies show, of course, that the teacher outside of the home, the teacher is the most important influence on the success of the child's education and in their performance in school. If you believe that, why is it that the law really denies access to those teachers in the low income and minority community? Very often, either in contract or in federal law or in state law, there's just no way you can quite get those teachers to that community that's in most need of that talented help. That's a civil rights issue. That's called a denial of equal protection. And that's what exists today as a matter of federal law and as a matter of local policy in school districts because they've decided they could use federal dollars instead of concentrating on those children for which the law was written. They could migrate some of these monies out into the suburban districts and elsewhere. You think you want to touch a hot political issue? Come on aboard.